when I was invited to speak at this forum, I was given a 2010 brochure, and the headline struck me as something that I had experienced: fearless business, taking risk and reaping rewards. So while today is about little giants and growth and to be the best, this one touched me, and I said that I will continue my story based on 2010 going into 11. And my story really starts on my years of early teenage life, where my cousin Gary, who is here, always reminds me that I was a sticker collector. Obviously, this annoyed the family, because behind every door, behind every cupboard, everything that David could find as far as a sticker, he enjoyed getting it and putting it in place. And at night when I go to sleep, I could look again at my collection. I never knew, obviously, in those days, that this vision was taking me somewhere. So that as I passed through high school, I got another vision where, having been accepted into university, I decided that I would like to go into printing school instead. So that against the odds in my family, brothers, father, we don't know anything about printing. I mean, we don't know about that. So I took the chance and did 3 years in printing school. And on the second year, I was back in Trinidad, and I got the opportunity to work in a sticker factory. Now, you have to recognize that this is like the love returning again. I could still smell the vinyl, smell the adhesive, and loved every day of work that I did there on summer. And on returning, at that time, I was on a flight back to Toronto, and I was explaining to this guy on the screen that it's my last year, I'm going to be a printer. And he said, well, I'm a printer also. And in fact, I'm starting a company next year, and when you graduate, you have a job. So over 5 years, 5 hours, my communication with this guy obviously influenced him that I could really help him out in starting this company. So I wrote home in those days, letters and so on, and said, I met this guy, and things look good for me already. I mean, I graduated, I have a work already. So he followed me during this year of graduation and made sure that he kept track on me. And at that stage, my vision was being recognized as not only am I going into printing and labels, but by my ability to influence, my ability to capture a mentor like this guy seemed to be well in my favor. So in 1976, when I graduated, I went off, and there was nothing more than an idea or a business plan. You can imagine at that time, I know nothing about the contents of a business plan, but this guy adopted me into his home, the president of the company. So it was day and night for 2.5 years to see this company come out of the ground from a booklet called a business plan to a factory that was quickly serving all across Canada. That meant to see something like that was 7 days a week. And we flew across Canada promoting the product while the labels were being made in Mississauga, Ontario. The company was Label House. So I didn't like the winters too much. I didn't like the cops. You can't drink a beer with cops all around. So I was getting fussy, and he said, look, you know, you need to go back to Trini, and you need to set up. So I said, boy, I don't know, back home, my dad isn't too sure what printing and so on, but yeah, go on back. From here, I will give you the support. But he never invested, my mentor never invested anything else but time. So to get me on my way, he gave me something called a day timer, which was a book that recorded time management and money management. It goes in your lapel, in your pocket. a cross pen, and a windsurfer board, sailing board. And he said, you're on your way back to Trinidad. So when I got to Trinidad and tried to explain to people, this is where the passion kicks in. This is where the vision kicks in. I want to be a label printer in Trinidad. And they said, you're in the wrong place at the wrong time. This is what is happening now. Oil, again, at that time, if you just quickly look at what the internet says, was going into serious depression, and we were coming off a $35 barrel and going into single digits under $10. All of the party and the boom days were just about to slide. So I was arriving at a time in Trinidad where there was going to be serious decline, and the country was talking about crisis. And I can tell you today, as an entrepreneur, that is the moment in time where you can break ice and where you can make the best of an opportunity. Because it is then that the government had decided in Trinidad and Tobago that better we try to start diversifying right away. So let's get more into manufacturing. Let's get import substitution going. Let's put up the banks like Development Finance Company. Let us put up the land where we can get factories going. Let's start to employ people. And right in front of my face, the action was happening. So my vision could now become a reality. All I had to do was convince people that my project was a reality. And in those days, we did it by making presentation with slides. So I could get the vision across to those people who were going to invest. And in one company, I think the chairman of Development Finance Company, during my presentation at that stage, it was about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, he fell asleep. So I said, well, that is it, no money coming. And as soon as I switched on the lights, he said, congratulations, you get the money all you need. So I said, wow. Now, if that's Trinidad, we're gone clear. So he didn't really want to see all the la-la-la. He just wanted to see the action. And at that time, we started up with the famous Republic Bank. And you have to imagine that at that stage, we had established a company. We were getting help from the government. We were now starting to move with Republic Bank and DFC. Republic Bank at that time was very much aware of my need to understand business. Today we heard the speakers, you can have your passion, you can have your knowledge, your products, but you don't understand business. And I knew very little about the business. So Republic Bank put certain officers to keep tag on me and make sure that I would run the business in such a way that it would grow. And it was a father and son business at that time. So we decided to put up a factory in Trin City, 5,000 square feet, and we set off. Now, when that factory went up and everything was supposedly going on target, they have, the real hardship began. The inefficiencies in Trinidad, some of them still plague us here, but as a young businessman, the inefficiencies at that time were even worse. And we had to wait an entire year because of certain things that were going on. For example, we had to wait for telephone poles to come up from Guyana to get this new industrial estate that we had put up. And every day counted in my life in that challenge, until I heard that the boat with the cargo turned over and all the poles disappeared and the boat sank. At that moment, we were becoming cashless. On those days, you have to remember that we ran on CB radios. We ran on VHF radios. My CB, I think, handle was Mangrove Dog. But that could communicate between Trin City, which to some people in the West, that was like Miami. You could communicate back and forth. But with all this confusion going on, you had to use your CB radios to find out, what's happening in business in Port of Spain while you were in Trin City. Things like those days, for those who remember, you had to wait for 2 years in a line to get a car. So therefore, used cars were a big thing. But we were out of money, being that year late. And we cuddled as a family, brothers and sisters, father and mother, And we decided to pump another 100,000 TT in those days, which to me today could be like $1 million. Republic said we'll throw in a little overdraft, but things got very tense. All right, so we had to live on bread and butter. It was amazing. The day when the power actually came through, started the equipment, we had to move real fast to survive. Our first customer in those days, 1979 or so, National Canners, a brand still today that's around Matooks. They gave us a shot. It was small order, tiny stuff, but you know what? When you work for National Canners, you could tell people around Trinidad you're working for National Canners. And that was very important. So we did on that. And what I had learned up to that stage, which is important, is our plans, our early parts of the plans that we set out on, where the return on investment for most entrepreneurs is sort of set to impress investors, where they have put a minimum amount of money going in to get a maximum amount of money going out. If it were me today, I would always have serious contingencies. And this is how business plans succeed, where they have a lot of fat and a lot of contingencies. I obviously played it real tight. But at that stage, I realized, too, now the plant is running. I had Gary, my sticker partner, cousin, had come now back to be with me in Trinidad. And we now have a reflection of one another at that stage. And we had to make, sell, collect, drive, the entire thing. There was no money to pay anybody, so we had to do the entire rounds. But we figured out in a short span of time we would be over this situation. So during the concept that you saw in the movie just now, the issue with raw materials, we constantly were out of raw materials because, again, the short shipments, and of course the port was a major annoyance. But the passion and the vision I had to explain to customs, to port people, to airport people, is that you guys have to understand, I am on a mission, I'm on a vision. And they would look at me as though, you in Mars, I don't know what you're talking about, but that ship ain't coming alongside for 2 weeks, and you're getting your cargo out of there for days. And I said, well, how do you solve this? And a guy said, a guy like you need to become a customs clerk because you're hustling everybody. And I said, well, how do you do that? Well, they have exams coming up in 2 months. Give me the books. Let's do it. When I became a customs clerk, now it became a bigger annoyance because I'm now walking into areas where most businessmen don't walk. Okay? And what was more important is that in the seaports and the airports, I began to direct traffic. So standing on a ship and telling the guy with the crane, those 2 pallets, all right, are mine, and that's the truck there. So pick it up, put it there. And to the amazement of all these other people in Trinidad saying, they say, how is white boy doing this? And he pointed out that I was on a mission. So becoming friendly with the ship captains, you have to learn to drink some grog in the morning, a little punch on shot. But this is how island life is. When people talk about Trinidad as a country, I still remember it as an island. Now we have a little thing here where the first bounce check came up in my career. And for many people who are in business, when they bounce a check, even today, they still feel the same emotions that the business is going under. We have reached the end. Now, it was a quick moment, and if you ever experienced this, to me in those days, at Piarco Airport, where I had a tool to be rushed to make a job, and BWIA Cargo said, sorry, can't deliver. A check was bounced for $176.46. So I said, no, man, you're talking to me, it's impossible. Let me see a copy of that. So with that, there was no ATMs, there's no cash, there's no telephones. There's no way to call the bank, who is all the way in Port of Spain, that we have a problem here. It's to get back in the car and do the 2.5-hour drive. Now, when you walk into Independence Square, it's the first time that you feel that you're going to take a banker and scorch him. So as a young businessman, I developed the confidence during that drive to say, I am going through that door, and I'm coming out with a letter of apology. And today I can tell you that you'll have to understand that bankers sell money. And when they're selling money, they need customers like us. And when they need customers like us, then we have to work together. They quickly apologized over and over and over, okay? Where maybe they had no money in their account for true, but the point was, in principle, they wrote apologetic letters, okay, to everybody that was necessary, which is the cargo people, the customs people. And I was, free of that, as though there was no problem. Went back to the airport, cleared my goods, and what I will always remember, again, with the bank manager is from there on, the relationship grew tremendously, okay, in working together. In 1988, this is just a little shot, my mentor, again, had come down to Trinidad. Label House was starting to look a little nice 10 years later. But again, in the banking life, which is important for entrepreneurs, is that we met at lunch very often, okay, and the banker always heard more about my dreams, and I could tell him where I was going and how much money to reserve for me. I was beginning to love loans, love leverage, okay. So I could talk to them that, listen, you know my customers, we're talking about Carib, Lever Brothers in those days, Whitco, Guinness, International Brewing. We need money, we need bucks, all right? No more family injection, we need to leverage. In those days, they didn't have plastic bottles yet, which reminds me is that all the bottles that you all see on the tables today in front of you could never have been a vision of 1979 that we would be drinking water out of bottles and labeled, and hundreds of millions of labels go into that, in this day and age. I mean, this is a terrific vision to see all these bottles out there. But when plastic came, Label House, spun into a new life. So a quick view, again, is that we had started with 2 employees and quickly worked to 5 years in the 50. And as I said earlier on, our problem was getting raw materials to get the press to deliver. We had real problems with that. Everything had to come from away. But when we did it and we got our jobs done, we remember always having a little Chinese food, drinking some beers after work. The people of the company were very critical to our growth, and we were involved as much as I am today with the people of the company. And I know that that is the strength of Label House Group as it became something. So from day one, I was very involved and deep in the system. So I could now sleep with debt, as I told you. And I remember 10 years later, again, one of the bank lunches, invited to lunch in those days was quite a nice thing, as many courses of great food and wine. But my banker said, enough is enough. You're now 10 years later. I've seen your accounting results. You have a balance sheet. So what? I still don't understand how much that is. But you need to take a rest now. Cool it on weekends. Go and take a swim. Take a line with family and thing. But there was an indication then that I had secured a position 10 years later in the business world in Trinidad. And it was a very important turning point, because with the confidence of the bankers and my customers in those days, with those who worked with us, family and other employees, they all created an aura where Label House was now on the map. Very important, so that we could take one step to the other. We then had a very important move, which many companies have to go through. Do we want a family company or do we not? And this was going through my mind. And I know that they didn't have enough counseling in those days, or people that you could speak to about the do's and don'ts. But I traveled and did a seminar in Virginia to go and find out more about second, third, and fourth generations of printers. And I can tell you from here that over a 10-day period, it was completely depressing. There was no positiveness in family generation business in the late 80s, 90s. I came back, as I said, it was January, and had a chat with my dad, and I said, we in real trouble here, man. People are bawling, crying, families bust. So how are we going to deal with next generation? Because I would like to do a family business. And he said, if you would like that, then don't study the course or the seminar. Let's do a family business. And that's when, again, Gary was already with me. My brothers and sisters became active in the business. But it's very important that a decision was made. In order to put that into a good level of governance, we formed a board, and again, it was just reinforced by my dad as chairman and us as executives. So while we call it a director and a board, it did not have any outside governance at the time. But we began to come to meetings regularly and talk business. We talked much more about setting up the company for its future, where we would have proper tracking and filing systems for HR. We would look at how people could drive their packages through incentives, give them perks. It was a whole new world of management. Of course, the cultural change at that time with the family and cousins in the business, we have to have internal fights in the executive and come out. But that's how the company was growing. By that time, we were very, very sure that our auditors, Pricewaterhouse still today, could ensure that our growth was being handled by all the statutory parts of Trinidad. Pay your tax, do everything right. So Trinidad was again coming out of the recession strong, and we had a lot of manufacturers, and Label House was a real buzzword. However, we were still scrambling. The market was small, so we had to try all sorts of products: tea bags, wrappers for soap, margarine, lottery tickets, packaging for snacks, chocolates. You know, we're looking all around the country. Whoever we could make a sticker with, we give it a shot. But everything that you see in this business is an art. You have to learn to make it from scratch. A tea bag was not an easy thing to make. A tea tag, that's it. So all of a sudden, plastic bottles started to appear in Europe and United States, and this was going to be our major explosion into the new world. I think the first one was SM Jalil coming in with a Jalita, and we became the preferred partner, and then came Solo in those days, a preferred partner, and then onwards to the Coca-Colas. It was blow mind to see that we no longer need to run around, that this industry, which is called ready to serve, was exploding with plastics. We didn't talk about environmental issues in those days. While creating that market, we saw the opportunity, my brother and I, to set up a sign company. And this is how you grow organically. Walking into Lever Brothers one day, looking at a recently published document from them, there was a pie chart that showed that labels and packaging occupied, I think, 2.5% to 3% of their overall spend. And right next to that showed that there was a 5% spend in marketing and promotions. And I said, what's that about? What's inside of there? And what it was about signage. So we started at that 20 years ago to say, if we're going to visit Lever Brothers on labels and so on, packaging, you might as well pick up the signage. So we started a sign company. In those days, it was called Digi Signs. And that started on Arapita Avenue, where there's a nice little bar there now. And then moved to McDonald Street, where there's a great company who will speak next. And then we moved it up to Trin City. And that sign company, the passion about it again is that we want to be the best. Signs really need a real change 20 years ago. So while that was going on that hand, we then decided that we had to export. So we looked at the map and saw Suriname in the south, Belize in the north, and just began a parade. Now the issue about these concepts, for those who do not feel that they have a large enough market in Trinidad, is that there is going to be a requirement for a lot of energy and a lot of new people that you have to meet and a lot of logistics issues, but it's going to take time. And today, the time that we spent, the rum we drank, the beers we drank, and the people we met afforded us to be nearly 60% of our sales today are export, and we are a net income earner of US dollars. So we're very happy that we made that move. So we are shipping at that stage all through the Caribbean, CARICOM, and then we moved on where the technology was coming again with the plastic bottles. But what was happening now is that the technology on plastic bottles was also new to the US. So some of the issues were that when we were pegged to do something in Trinidad that was prototyping in the U.S., I wasn't aware that we were looking for trouble. And we got in bed with some big players in Trinidad, and we caused some very big problems, which, put the company on edge there. We had letters suing us and stuff like that, and we had to then turn our company into a position again and manage it where these companies could not attack us on consequential issues. And people have to remember, again, as an entrepreneur, when somebody sues you for consequential, they could take you down. If they just take you for the product, you could replace it. But we got our lawyers to redo it, and today you'll see the back of our invoices that you're not allowed to do that. But it was a very important move at that stage to solve a very big problem that was occurring. We now were 15,000 square feet, 100 people, and I remember clearly that the neighbor who actually built the steel structure for us in 1978 was still a steel fabricator next to us. And I would walk around to him and I would say, Eddie, man, when you're moving out, I mean, come on, I don't know, young versus old, but you have to move on. Here's a check. And he said, no, I'm not moving on. I said, well, this factory here is bulging into yours. And he just refused and refused. So Label Boulevard, as it was just unable to hold the expansion because we had the sign company, and we had to move. And we found in Frederick Settlement a beautiful opportunity, of which my brother Richard piloted the whole concept, and we began moving from that tight spot in Trin City. And there was a time where, again, my brother Richard, who is here, could not believe that I had found a source in England who would design, draw, manufacture, execute, and implement a printing building in England. And I had just come back and got that from a brewery in Aruba. And he said, why would we want to import a building from England when, construction and so on is a big thing in Trinidad? But we looked at it and we realized that the focus of a printing company could be designed professionally in the UK, and all the pieces of the puzzle were shipped to us. And we did it, and we mounted that up, and it was a very professional printing operation that was put together in Frederick Settlement. And that was the turning time, I think, in 2002, 2003, where we were now set to further explode 150 people. But we moved from 3 shifts, 7-day, automatically down to 2 shift, 5-day. So you can see the efficiencies and effectiveness of that. Now we have action where, again, we're out there and we have to talk about dividends and shareholders. The company is growing up. These are things that the young businessmen didn't know when they were first starting, but it was very critical. Like today we were talking about profitability. Our company still thrives on the concept of pay for performance. All our packages are set in this direction. And we also feel, as family and owners, they take from the bottom line, not from the top. So it is professionalized because we felt that it will be easier to run a business that you could see exactly where you're going, what the vision was, and from year to year you could plan what dividends were to be distributed. But it was quite interesting because we all started to run behind bottom line rather than take from the top. So today, as I said, we have 50,000 square feet out there, and we have the latest state-of-the-art modern equipment, both in the sign and the labeling business. We were threatened, just to say that we were threatened by unions a few times. Another concern, as you go into a couple hundred people, you think that you're in touch with the people until one day you say, we need to talk. We have a union possibly growing here. Now, that was very scary, and in fact, I was convinced by companies in Trinidad who already had unions that don't worry if they come. There's a way to deal with them. But in the meantime, go and find out what is your problems. And I was very well counseled, and today again in 2011, we still don't have a union. And I think that's the furthest talk away from them because we pay for performance. So, great news on that side. We went into ISO 9000. Again, if you want to run a company successfully, you have to lay the rules. So 9000 took us from a level of what we call Trini to what I would call global standards. And the culture that had to be refined from the day that we were certified ISO was extremely difficult. As the entrepreneur myself, I would now have procedures in order to go and do research and development in a factory that I could say I founded. So I had to step back now and follow procedures in order to lead this whole new program. But today, it is a core part of the business. Just like we would have OSHA and all the other rules of the game, this process, which we wrote, made us rethink our whole life permanently. So today, when people come in, they do the same thing on a daily basis, regardless if it's right or wrong. I'm not saying it's always right. But we are no longer a company that depends on skill. You know, which printers 25, 30 years ago, you say, well, that fella there, he real good, eh? But today, I think that we have made it a process where we depend a lot less on skill. Recession-proof. We always have plan B, plan C. The critical nature of how this company evolved is that we conquered, again, 25 countries. And when one is up, one is down. When one is up, one is down. Now, we went into countries which, again, unusual for Trinis, from Haiti to El Salvador, you know, to Guatemala, to Guyana in those days. A lot of people just didn't figure out what we were seeing down there. But today, you know, the Santo Domingo and the Haitis and all of those are huge customers of ours. And we have gone in there, and even since the earthquake, for example, of Haiti, where we had to bundle down and, you know, share sympathies for all those deaths, that country, from where we see it, with the people we deal with, has grown maybe 50 or 60% in consuming. So we have, you know, we have ventured into areas where if Trinidad is in recession, if the world is in recession, we spread out the business wide enough into a market where we could cushion. And even though we are scared of the last global recession and plan B and plan C, my concept was that we do a lot of, all our labels mainly are for things that sell under 10 TT. And under 10 TT even includes a beer. That just never stops being consumed. And if you look at the region, in fact, on a daily basis, people pull out their pocket and they buy water bottles, they buy phone cards. Anything under 10 TT keeps going. A cigarette, maybe not a pack, a shot of rum, a beer, energy drinks. So we are there, fortunately. And in the middle of global recessions, we picked and we visualized how we would cushion, you know, international and regional recessions. So lucky for us, we do strategic planning. And that's one of the things that, you know, keeps us confident. So we now predicting in our region how things will look down the road a year at a time. And we have now sort of got more in bed with our customers because they are also predicting through the use of computers and science. And in fact, the synchronization is getting better and better, where the predictions are being more and more sure of what's going to happen in the islands of the CARICOM and the region. We had an experience where we were growing big, and the vision was to go to Mexico, where there was 120 million people, and we were already supplying Central America. So, you know, quickly we decided, let's, instead of shipping and spending all this money on cargo, let's go over there and set up. So we met a great partner who was already in the label business with very deep pockets, and we set up great plans. Again, we followed the business plans from start to finish. Everything was not done from the hip. It was done methodically with the bankers, the investors, the markets. We had great plans. But the execution of this did not turn out. The culture between the Latins and the Trinidadians, my family, my board, whatever, didn't cut it. So we had to pull out. That bailout took, you know, 2 years to really come out clean. It is a moment in time where, again, our business was hard enough on the ground where we had a crash, but we were able to pull out. And we pulled out because an assemblance of people who were energized to do something about it. Because at that stage, again, in business, you could cut out. You could leave your business to the bankers and let them hit it. But we cuddled in again. Our plane landed and took off strong. So we saved the company. Again, lessons learned is that We are still following plans, and we are still having visions. Try to always have cash in reserves. I think our accountants and our finance people, our board now is structured with 2 or 3 bankers. So, you know, we have high levels of governance when it comes to cash in reserve. Make your banker feel you are his only account. And this is important because, you know, you have to be able to keep real close to your banker and have him respond as quick as possible when you need help and when you need leverage. And do not, growth every year is critical, and we set it to a level where we could manage. Do not participate in negative or bad news about the economies you serve. You can stay alone and make your life. The more you read and the more you listen to and all the television experiences on crime and economies and depression, there are people right in front of you making a killing. So do not get involved in discussions. You could look at statistics, you can be brave, but you just tell yourself, I'm cutting through that. Be very innovative. You know, it's important that you understand the next move is what can we make next, what can we serve our customers next. Pay your taxes, good governance. We speak about governance, we look at risk all the time. Make your money from the bottom line. Understand your customer's needs and his company or their company as well as you know yours. When we talk to Shell, we talk about barrels. When we talk about the breweries, we talk hectoliters. When we talk to the Coca-Colas, we talk cases. And, you know, it's very important that you understand how they think, and then they would be much closer to you in giving your business. Believe in technology and invest. We are constantly evolving with technology at Label House Group. And trade journals are very critical. Reading trade journals and attending conferences and going to shows is part of how I see the life. We at our company are very particular about who attend shows, what results we get, but we are today in the world of technology. Treat your family separate. It's very important that you understand to learn how to keep the family in a family business outside of the business, so that when they come to work, they come for business and not for family. It is a very important part of today's world where family businesses are being told to evolve in their own units and not to bring their issues to work and affect other people. Because families, if it's a family business, from the top have to lead by example. And in many cases, and including our company, we have from time to time set bad examples. But I think it's important if you're in a family business to take heed. Learn to understand where families are and are not. Make the people of your company feel extremely important. Understand when they put in roofs on their houses, when they're having kids, when they're having a cook-up. Everything that you need to know about an employee as you walk past in hallways is very important. Recently, we had a minor incident at the company and made everybody sort of cuddle together. And I could not but understand and hear the issue where you deal with people that they love their job so much at Label House Group, and that they have to be so careful so that no incidences happen, so the future of their families and their jobs are held. This is, you know, it's touching, but the thing is that we have to understand our people are so close to us, and they are the ones that are really making us futuristic. So in summary, again, we tried to go to the stock market. In 2003 was the preparation for 2011, of which we did not go this year. And for reasons is that we didn't feel that it was time. Like we heard earlier on, one guy wanted to sell his company, and last minute we pulled back. Well, we pulled back too. So we decided to go back to family, strengthen the family unit, restructure the company to be more family-like and futuristic. We recovered from Mexico. We have strengthened the systems that will allow sustained profits. And today, we all think in our company that cash is king. And I would like to close and say thank you very much for allowing me to give my little story, and appreciate BDC and Republic Bank. Thank you all.